Somebody had a question about, is it oversimplifying to think that self only has three tactics, like, dislike, and who cares? That's just, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. Right? So we'll be talking more about Buddhism and self and the three poisons over the next couple of days. But I want to keep to the process, okay? So we're starting topographically, very real world, just using the tools of mindfulness to observe yourself, right? Whatever you call it. We're not even defining it, whatever you call yourself. And in the last 24 hours, since yesterday's talk, there has been a lot of practice, a lot of meditation, discussion, and people, I think, are kind of getting a sense of there's something going on in there, right? And many people, it's not as if we haven't known it, right? But the extent, the pervasiveness of the I, me, mine, and of this sense of self and separate selfness, I think people are many people are quite taken aback. Just how, again, how it really perfumes, contaminates, whatever you want to call it, or pervades just our constant experience, right? We don't even begin to understand the depth of the self-filter that is multiple self-filters that are standing between us and direct experience. And I know many of you have told me in our interviews how helpful you find the kind of dialogue and interaction. Because again, like we all know, we are very good at seeing other people's selfness, aren't we? We are experts with other people, seeing all their foibles and shortcomings and their self-centeredness and their self-attack, right? But we are often blind to our own. And again, that is because we are so completely, to one degree or the other, some more or less, identified with ourself in all its endless manifestations. Is that clear? So it is a very difficult task. It is an exercise in really mindfulness. Mindfulness meaning to really be the objective experiencer of your mental experience, to see clearly what's going on. So again, I think dialogue is helpful because oftentimes we are going, oh, when somebody shares, you go, oh, kind of a me too, right? Me too, me too, me too. And so that's helpful because I think we're realizing the commonality of it. The storyline may be different, but the I, me, mine, how it attaches to everything is quite pernicious. Somebody in one of the groups, actually it was Mark, I can use your name, he brought up a very interesting point. Mark has been involved very sincerely with the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition for a couple of thousand years, right? I mean, at least. Been on many retreats. He's been on retreats with me. It's not as if he hadn't heard about non-self, but was telling he's been quite blown away in this retreat to kind of get it in that way. And what I said to him, and this is something I've noticed in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, which is a tradition I practice in, is I think that's a whole. It is there. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about non-self. He always talks about non-self. Right? He has books about non-self, and he's always talking. But he talks about it in terms of interbeing, right? He talks about it, the cloud and the water in the flower, in the pet, all. He talks about, because I think that, I remember talking about it years ago, but I think that is more, it is cultural. It is Vietnamese culture, and it's also, the Tibetans have had the same trouble. You probably have read, when the Dalai Lama, people started first talking about the Westerners, this is like 30 years ago, having self-esteem issues. He's like, he had to ask his translator, what are they talking about? Self-esteem issues. Same way with inner child, all these kind of things that we are so conversant with. They're going like, what are they talking about? And I think that is because even though these are wonderful teachers and in certain ways they get us, I think they've missed one significant piece that we know, that we are a culture of ego and self, right? Western psychology is ego psychology. It's ego-based psychology. Our educational system, our parenting is all focused on what? Self, right? Right. My kid is an honor student, right? I mean, we're always, you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's all about self. It's all about, building up self-esteem, right? So we are a culture that right from the beginning puts incredible focus on self and ego, which other cultures don't. Actually, other cultures do the opposite. In Japanese culture, I know it's probably changing, traditionally, you don't stand out. Ooh, if your child stands out, you're embarrassed. If you never, point out their good qualities or something, because it would just build up their ego. So it's and I would imagine Vietnamese, these are Confucian cultures, these are cultures where, fitting in, being part of the whole, is really the ethos. So, we're the opposite as a culture. And so that's why, and I was telling Mark that I had a conversation with the senior monastics, a Western, what he died. He was used to be the Catholic priest, wonderful brother, well, just a light bulb. And he said to me, this is a number of years ago, he said, as he knew I was a Dharma teacher down here, he said, do you ever, talk about ego and self? And I said to him, I talk about it all the time, and we got into the same kind of conversation, how Thai really doesn't talk about it. And again, I think it's not that he doesn't get it, he just doesn't get how deeply it's a cultural thing. Is that clear? And I think in other Asian teachers, you hear a lot about emptiness, you hear a lot about non-self, you know what I mean? But you don't kind of hear it in the way that we get it, the way we feel it. Is that clear? So that's what I was saying to Mark, and yeah, I can understand it. I guess for me, being a therapist, it was kind of like, I mean, I got it. I was like, I could see what was going on with people. And therefore, when I started to teach Dharma, I could see it there too. I could realize, oh, a lot of these people are suffering from diseases of self. That's our disease. We have diseases of self. Okay? So, I think we're in a good place. So let's continue the journey. Not jumping too deep yet. Again, I think, there are people in this room, people in our Sangha, people in the world who, who practice a lot of Buddhism, love the deeper stuff, love Shantideva, love the Bodhisattva way, love the wisdom path, love the deep teachings of emptiness, and yet still, in the world of self, are still very reactive. Okay? And I think that's important that we not be ashamed or embarrassed, by that fact. I think, again, we talked, a number of people in their sharing talked about their, how often they show up in the world in a self-conscious way, wanting to, present themselves in a certain way, right? And we can talk more about that. But I think people do that in the Dharma way too. They want to present themselves, I'm a serious student, I go for the big stuff. I go for the deep stuff, which is good. That's a good aspiration, right? But, we got to take care of our wounds, because if you don't, you will find this may be your third go around for the deconstruction of the myth of self, and you may have been in 5 Shantideva Bodhisattva way intensives, and yet still, you're, as Robbie shared with us very, very kindly, that still, out of nowhere, there it is. There she is again. And that shows us that, at the same time we are moving along, we have to make sure that these other parts of us, and we'll talk what that really is about, are moving along too. And we can't be. I mean, I think I heard that from some people already in the retreat. It used to be. I remember when I was a therapist. People come to me depressed, anxious, and I, interview them and kind of listen to them. And after a session or two, I'd say, it's still like, I still think this is your, inner childhood trauma issues. And they go, no. I mean, they would be so frustrated, right? No. I worked on those issues for years in therapy, I'm no, I don't want to have to deal with this stuff again. Well, I don't want to have to deal with it either, but, you know what I mean? But here we are, right? You see me? But here we are. And so let's deal with it. And let's deal with it in a way this time that we don't move on before we have really transformed, healed and transformed. Is that clear? And I think, again, if I'm speaking to any of you or if I'm speaking to all of us, we need to acknowledge that in a very forthright way. And again, doing the kind of exercises that we're doing in the intensive, we're doing in the retreat, are very helpful. I mean, a number of people have also said, it's been very helpful to me just to have one retreat that's just on the self. Because usually it's part of a bigger matrix of Dharma, right? But just to kind of be able to, just the I, me, mine, the self, and just that's the only thing I'm watching, that's the only thing I'm really mindful of, is very beneficial, right? And I think it is. Now again, in a certain way, it is the most beneficial. Because the issue of the perception of sentient beings as perceiving themselves as a separate self, and that has a self-existent quality that is permanent over time, is the fundamental delusion from which everything else comes. Right. So, to spend time really looking into the issue of self, I think you will get great mileage. Because if you look, as I said yesterday, if you look at all your issues, everybody know, just for a minute, just take a time and think about your issues. Right? Some people may need a couple hours for this one. But just do the top ones, okay? The ones that are most up. But I think it's funny because you might think, if you think of all the issues you've had in your life, right? It's quite a list, isn't it? The issues you're dealing with, the issues you're working through, the issues, right? Personal issues, interpersonal issues, emotional issue with my anger, issue with my fear, issue with anxiety, issue with my sadness, issue, issues with this, issues with that. Everybody know what I'm talking about. What is this? The common thing to all those myriad issues are what? Me. Right? Me. The central actor in the drama of our life is me. It's all about what's happening to me. And let me say, if you want to understand very simply what it's about, that you can see is self at war with reality. That's the battle you are fighting every day, if not moment to moment. Is that clear? Right? Reality is what is happening. Right? That's all it is. Right? What's happening out there on the river today, that's all what's happening. That's reality. Right? But self does not accept reality. Right? It only believes in one reality. Its reality. And its reality is made up of endless likes and dislikes, preferences, ideas, identities, right? Endless. So, in the face of reality, what does self do? What? It endlessly controls and manipulates. Right? Rather than doing this, the most simple, obvious, easiest stance in terms of life, which is total openness and acceptance. Of what? Of reality. I mean, whether you like reality or don't like reality, it's still reality. Right? You know, you may like this person or don't like this person, they still are who they are. I mean, it doesn't change them at all. Right? You may like the way the world is going, you may hate the way the world is going. That is the way the world's going. That's reality. Right? In the face of reality, self declares war. Now, everybody here is different. Some people, you know, they're always at it. Some people a little more laid back. But it's really it's more or less, for most, the same. It is that interface with the self and reality and the inability of self to accept reality as it is, from which suffering, emotional afflictions arise. Is that clear? I mean, this is simple, easy to say, right? But it's really as simple as that. People are who they are. People are doing what they're doing. Is that true? But as many people have pointed out, we are chronically judging, evaluating, comparing that. And what's our criteria? Myself. And all my ideas and values and blah, 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 and preferences and likes and dislikes, etc., that I think are what? Right or true. So we don't even experience reality ever. All we're ever experiencing is the filters that self has erected. You know, why do we have to learn mindful communication? Right? Anybody ever heard that word? What do we practice between 4:30 and 5:30 every day? What's it called? Right. Why do we have to do things like that? Because it's so damn hard for us to what? To listen to another human being say what they're saying, let them finish their sentences, not say anything, and just listen without judging, without interpreting, without projecting, without right? Wow, is that hard? Right? We got to get everybody in a circle and get somebody to run it with a bell, you know, and give them rules. You just listen. You didn't realize that what it's about, did you? Deep. Right? So we can learn the simple thing of what? Being present to another human being when they speak, and we just listen to them. We just offer them, if we are really listening, we just offer them our presence. We accept them. They can say whatever they want, right? You know, why do we have to have these kinds of? Because so hard for us, right? We have to enforce silent rules. No crosstalk, right? Because we're all wanting to what? What? Respond, help them, guide them, give them some support. Right? Can you see? We just can't accept, this is their truth. This is what they're feeling. Maybe they're happy, maybe they're sad. Maybe life is easy, maybe they're struggling. That's all. So what? I mean, not so what like indifferent, but that's reality. It's not permanent. It's not that they're just sharing their reality. But in the face of reality, self, wants to do something. Why? Because of its conditioning. But primarily, many people who think, oh, I'm just I just want to go out there and give them a hug. Right? What we want to do, just want to give them a hug. You know why you want to give them a hug? Because you're uncomfortable in the face of their suffering. See? It's your own uncomfortability. Right? Just to be in the presence of somebody who's sad or angry. Ooh, I don't want to get anybody angry here. Right? Why not? Why don't we want to get anybody angry? Why do we mouse around a lot? Ooh, I don't want to get them angry. Why? It's uncomfortable. Ooh, right? Right? See? Self is uncomfortable. In self's agenda for the world, are people supposed to be angry at Dan? No, you see? Can you see? And that's all. And Dan think that's normal, right? But you see, but it's really why. It's because of your conditioning, et cetera, how your self was formed, somehow anger was dangerous. Anger was something, we could, lots of reasons. But we end up in a kind of a, don't want to get anybody angry. Right? And we think that's like a virtuous thing. You see? Right? Or how about this one? Ooh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Right? I'm a good person. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Why not? Why not?
They won't like me anymore.
They won't like me anymore. They won't like me anymore. Or that's not the way I perceive myself.
Or I don't want to watch them suffer.
Or I'm not comfortable, right? You see, but again, that's our own, it makes me uncomfortable. But hurt feelings are something that's going on inside somebody. And you know why they're hurt? Because of their ego. You see? It's just ego. Because in their world, what? Well, no. Well, they're hurt because nobody's supposed to do that or say that to me. You see, hurt is a response to somebody saying, what? The truth. I mean, a lot of people get hurt because you say no to them. Right? It's like, that's the world. Right? Sometimes the world says yes, sometimes the world says no, doesn't it? Is this true or not? Or have I been living in some kind of altered universe? Right? I've had to learn, it's been painful to deal with the fact that not everybody does things I ask them to do. Not everybody shows up in the way I want them to. I have children. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. Right? Do you see? That's our world. We are so ego-centered in let's say America. I don't know other cultures that we just baby the ego. Do you see? Rather than going, let's look into this. In Dharma, we say, let's look into this. What's really going on here? But we're so we it's like we pussyfoot around the ego. Don't want to get it angry. Don't want to get it hurt. Don't want to disappoint it. Right? But why not? I mean, has anybody here ever been disappointed? You laugh because why? Because of course. I mean, because in reality, things don't always turn out the way we want. Right? People don't always treat us the way we want. Right? Not everybody who's supposed to on my list calls me on my birthday. Unbelievable. I'm making that one up, but I know somebody who's like that. But I mean, can you see? I mean, we and these are petty little things, but can you see? You know, whoa! I kind of bowed to somebody this morning. They didn't bow back to me. Ooh. Right? It hurts. Disappointed. Not noticed. Right? All of that. I mean, I could be up here for days telling you stories about what? About self. About a self that's at war with reality. I'm just giving you the kind of quick and dirty, right? I mean, this is just quick. This is going right to the heart. Self at war with reality. And because it doesn't want to accept and be open to reality, all its denials, all its repressions, all its aggressions, all its manipulations, all its protectives, right? We got into a thing with Gary this morning. Gary said to me, what did you say to me? Something about protecting. So Gary, I'm just repeating this. Yeah, I won't. So yeah, so you want to protect yourself from insecurity feelings. So when you have these things called insecurity feelings, how do they feel?
They make me feel lesser.
Well, I would say that's a little backwards. So when you perceive that someone is treating you or talking to you or perceiving you in a way that is less than you want them to,
Yes.
you hear the I? Less than you want them to, right? You see? Already reality is occurring. Reality is what? Can we control what everybody thinks about us? Can we, Mark? No. And yet what? As Mark was saying this morning when he comes in the room and scans, we're trying to figure out how can I proceed here and not look like a total jerk? Right? I mean, it's ridiculous because I know Mark, he's anybody but a total jerk. And yet inside, there's this little self going, got to figure this one out because the last thing in the world I want to do is be perceived as less than, not the sharpest tack in the pack. Not the brightest Dharma student, not the most developed, not the most insightful. Whew. Can you see that? And so we carry that burden, right? We carry that burden, right? And it's all imagination. None of it's real. It's all just our imagination, right? But not only because you carry those fears around and those beliefs about yourself around, all about self, then you have to work hard to control and manipulate. And everybody in here, to one degree or another, spends a lot of time in life controlling and manipulating. Right? So, you work very hard to do things right. Right? Gary, working very hard to get this right. So people will what? Like me, think you're smart, think you're competent, right? I mean, a lot of work, right? Yeah. And then if something happens where you're a little not sure whether that's going to work, then you go, you see, that's your control strategy. Control everything to make it work. But if that's beginning to break down, then you go into protect, right? Defend. And now it's time to defend the self, which really doesn't exist, by the way. But yet in our imagination, there's something to defend. From what? From somebody perceiving them in a way they don't want, or somebody saying something to them that we don't want them to say, right? Yeah, I mean, and it's not like I'm a genius. It's like this is the dynamic, right? This is the war, right? Gary has a self that has been cultivated by causes and conditions, so it's showing up in the moment the way it does with all its, right? And it's just working it, right? And it's controlling whenever it can. It's manipulating the environment whatever it can so it feels safe and it gets its needs met. And then if it doesn't, it pulls back into protective mode. Oh, don't say it. Don't think it, right? Because we think if they say it or think it, we'll just die. It'll be devastating, right? Isn't that what we think? I mean, at some level, it seems like such a big deal to be found out, right? To be found out that I'm not who I think I should be, or I'm not who I think other people think I should. I mean, it's like, I even get lost in it. It's so convoluted, and yet it is so real and painful, and it takes so much work. Is everybody clear? And again, everybody is different, right? We all have our different backgrounds, and our, because of that, our self-identities, are stronger or weaker, or, you know what I mean? But bottom line, this, the reason you think I'm so insightful up here is just because I'm talking about self. And obviously, since I'm a total egocentric, I have a lot of experience in observing how self operates. Right? Master Do. Yeah, I want to have a lot of dialogue. So in our intensive and in past intensives and past retreats, I always quote Zen Master Dogen, the great seminal mind of Japanese Buddhism, Japanese Zen Master Dogen, where he said, the study of Buddhism is the study of self. Wow, when I first read that, I went, wow, right? Because I thought the study of Buddhism was the study of Buddhism, right? You studied Buddhism. You studied the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, the Three Marks of Existence, the Eight Levels of Consciousness, the Five Skandhas, right? You studied all the teachings of Buddhism. And all of a sudden I saw this quote, the study of Buddhism is the study of self. Now luckily I read that years ago. And I went, wow, there it is. Right? This is the study of Buddhism. You want to know everything about suffering, the cause of suffering, and study that. And his second line, so study of Buddhism is the study of self. To study the self is to forget the self. Oh, I thought that was profound, right? Because we think to forget the self, I got to kind of drop it off somewhere. I got to get beyond it. I got to kind of find some alternative non-self universe that I can live in. Right? Isn't that what we think? Yeah. And here's Zen Master, the great Zen Master going, the study of Buddhism is the study of self, and when you study the self, you will end up at the non-self. Okay? I mean, that's so And then he goes on to say, study the self, and forget the self. To forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 things. We can talk more about that later. I mean, that's your interbeing. All right? Thai, because of, I think, his own enlightenment, he kind of starts there. You see? And I don't think he realizes we're back here. You see? You see? He's in the enlightenment of by the 10,000 things. That's the third verse. Most of us, we got to hear the first verse, you see, to get there. Anything else, Gary, is that clear?
It is. I'm just looking forward to the part where get some guidance on how that.
Yeah, no, Gary. No. You see, that's it. There's yourself. It's like, help me. I'm little. I'm confused. I'm not very smart or competent. Help me. You see? You see how he right away jumps in like that?
There is a trace of that in
Yeah, but see, no, Gary, you've been practicing Dharma for years. I know you know what to do. Once you got the roadmap, we're giving you the roadmap. What are you going to do?
get involved going in that direction.
Yeah, mindfulness, concentration, insight, healing. I mean, it's all the stuff you know. Now that I know that this chronic thoughts, feeling, perception, or simply this voice inside me, the voice of self, is the cause of my suffering. It is always giving me wrong advice until I've transformed it and it's a wholesome self. Huh?
I am clear on it.
Okay, take refuge.
You also, in the teaching, gave an indication that there's going to be some guidance on doing this monster.
Yeah, but you see, what you just said is the problem. Look how you said that. This monster ego, right? No wonder you're looking for, significant weapons in the battle with monster ego, right? Oh, now I understand you better. So you're thinking, Fred, no, you don't get it, Fred. This ego is a monster, and everything you've taught so far, these are like kitchen tools, I mean, I need pneumatic, I need power tools for this one. Oh, now I understand what you're looking for. Gary has a background in construction. You're saying, yeah, this is not a hammer and saw kind of thing, Fred. This is like, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It might be done with hand tools.
It might be done with hand tools. What if it's not a monster, Gary? See, what if it doesn't exist as a monster? It's not a monster. That's our problem. We think self is a monster. We'll be looking into actually what self is. But you think it's a monster. If we think it's a monster, then we think what?
If I think it's a monster, then it constantly is undermining me.
Well, something is undermining you, but we have to be careful with words, you see. Yeah, something's sabotaging you in this life. But you called it a monster. See, monsters are big, powerful, right? Scary, right? And to slay a monster, to tame a monster, takes incredible strength. You see?
We talked about how incessant self is.
Chatter, 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 chatter. Could be just a mouse. Chatter, chatter, chatter.
Yeah, so I've blown it up into something
Yes.
bigger than it is.
Right, and many of us have. Right, many of us have. Because because in our Western psychology and in our delusion, our fundamental delusion is just what you said, Gary. We think the self exists, but it doesn't exist. That is why liberating from it is not so hard. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. Have you ever seen your ego? Why not?
See where you're going.
Okay.
I'm just going to continue to follow the instructions.
All right, there you go. Gary says he gives up. He's just going to follow the instructions. Right. It's, I mean, if it was a monster, you'd see it. I mean, monsters are big. Right?
I kind of do see it.
Yeah. What does it look like? Gary says he sees it. I'm just, what does it look like?
It looks like something that has a control on me, and I do.
So you think there's an ego that has a control on some. There's an ego which is a thing which has control on something that exists called you. Okay.
So
We'll remember that one. Okay, that's good. So there's a thing called ego that has taken over you
Well,
and runs the show.
it is the construct that I've created, which is not always a conscious process to get there.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you've created it, which you have, why don't you just uncreate it? Why don't you just do it?
Can't answer that question because in that form, it seems like I just let go of everything.
Oh! Anybody old enough to remember Groucho Marx? Remember where that thing would come down? No, that what? What was that? It was the duck or the Gary, you said it. That's what did you see? You see what Gary just said? What do you mean, Fred? I'm supposed to let go of everything? Yes, Gary. That's the teaching. Have you ever chanted the verses on faith, on trust in mind? You ever chanted the Heart Sutra? What do you think that's saying, Gary? Yeah, there it is. I mean, if you want to be free, you see? If you don't want to be free, you don't have to. If you want to, most people, see, Buddhism is very interesting, the word selfless is really known, in most religions, right? We're in a Franciscan center, right? Most religions, being selfless, less self is what's taught, right? The only difference with Buddhism is the Buddha taught that it's not about reducing this self so it's a nicer, kinder, more compassionate self, or a more altruistic self. The Buddha actually taught that self, it doesn't really exist in any real way. So it takes it to a depth, that is not readily apparent. Okay, and so that was very, but you see, what you just did, Gary, was really also, you're very helpful to us today. You went, what am I, and people couldn't see it, he went, what am I supposed to do? Let go of everything? See, and if the answer to that is yes, the doing, Gary, is not like a one-time epiphany that just blows the whole thing up. You see, it's like once you get that's what you need to do, everything is what is arising moment to moment. That's everything. There's no thing called everything. Everything is just this, right? So in this moment, whatever's happening, can I let go of all my preconceptions, all my ideas, all blah, 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 and just be present? Totally empty, open, present. Fearless. Showing up. See, that's all you got to do. One moment at a time. That's all. See, that's easy. Slaying monsters and the dragon of ego, that's hard. Letting go of everything, that sounds like impossible, doesn't it? But it's just in this moment, you see, in this moment, when Gary's kind of doing a little role rehearsal because he's about to have an interview with Fred and he wants to make sure, are you willing to let go of that? Mindfulness will reveal what you're doing.
I've given a lot of strength.
Yeah, I can. Well, I can hear that. That's why I pointed out to you when you use the word. We have to listen to our language. We talk that way, right? Yeah. We reify self, and we've given it power. Can you see that? No one else has. We've given it power. And then we'll get to all the questions, okay, or the comments. What, like let's say you're a, what are you? What are those things? Mosaics. How they're like little pieces of tile, and they, right? Okay. So, you may have a lot of broken tile, right? Laying around, and you say, well, I think I'll just use all that tile and make a mosaic patio. Is that how that works? Okay. You see, but what you're doing, your choice is already circumscribed by the tiles that are laying around, right? It's not like you have the total infinity of every tile in the world to make your choices. You're the ones that are kind of laying around, right? That's what you're making. You see, that's the way self is created, right? There were things laying around, such as your family of origin, right? And who they were, and who the family was, and the way you were treated, and the way you weren't treated, and your own stuff, and and the schoolyard stuff, and you know what I mean? All this experience, it's just laying around. See, and we don't realize that we have this infinite capacity of creation, right? We only know, it's like, these are the pieces I got to put myself together with. You see? And so you put yourself together unconsciously just with the stuff that was around in your family of origin, in your relationships, in your, in the very narrowness of your experience. Those were your choices. Right? It's like having a toolbox with like 6 tools. Right? And you never realize, there are 150 other tools out there. Right? So you're always working with these 6 tools and you're doing your best. But for a lot of jobs, it's really hard. Right? Right? But that's all you know. All of a sudden somebody comes along and says, Gary, let me show you this tool catalog. And Gary goes, wow. God, if I only had one of those for the last 30 years, an electric saw. Wow. Right? A pneumatic hammer. Wow. A skill saw. You may like you'd be going, wow, have I been doing it the hard way? Okay? Yeah. So again, we need this conceptual kind of talk and ideas so we really understand it. So we have a countervailing energy to our conditioning, which seems so solid and real. You're not the only one. We all think we're real. Solid, permanent. We'll talk about that. But okay. Thank you, Gary. we had some people over here, and then we had some people over here. I think, Reed, you had your hand up? Yeah.
It's interesting because 5 minutes ago I was waving my hand because I was hung up on something.
Uh-huh.
And 5 minutes later, it's not so bad.
There you go. So Reed says, I'm doing this because this is being, recorded, and I've gotten some feedback that if I don't kind of repeat the question, people won't know what I'm responding to. So Reed said,
Okay, then I can remember the question.
there. So Reed says, hey, Fred, I really raised my hand 5 minutes ago because I had something that was really important I had to ask or say, and now I don't know what it is. I mean, that's so wonderful. Reed, you know all the issues that you've had in life, all the stuff on a day-to-day, but the irritations, the frustrations, you know what I mean? You know that? Remember all those? You really can't remember them now, can you? No. Why not? They're gone. Yeah? You see, they're gone. That's this wonderful thing. Things, as soon as they happen, they disappear. Right? So, it's very interesting, right? 5 minutes ago, we had a question we have to have asked. This is important, right? And 5 minutes later, it's like, you remember what it was, and you're okay. As if somehow, if you'd gotten the answer to that question, it would have been significant.
Would cause 4 more questions.
Right, there you go. At some point, Reed, we have enough information. So our questions should really be about things that we don't really understand, or something, or a place where we're blocked. Yeah, I kind of get it. Sort of like Gary's saying. I kind of get it, but I don't see how to apply it. See, those are good questions, right? Because they're liberating. We want to liberate each other. So anyhow, I'll come back to you if it appears again. Oh, okay. All right, Reed.
What role, if any, do instincts play in ourself? Is that one of the motives that is in me?
Yeah.
That need for security and affection and control that operate out of
Well, we have to.
so hardwired
Yeah.
into me that
Yeah, we have to be very careful. Yeah, so the question is, well, what about those hardwired kind of stuff? And Reed says, like security, affection, control. See, that's interesting, the way you said that. They're hardwired into me as if, they are essential, right? Now, I mean, I think there are some things that are essential, aren't they? Isn't like air essential? We can't live without air. We can't live without water. Probably can't live without food. Warmth. Yes, a certain degree of warmth if there are extremes of weather. Anything else that's really essential just to survive? Sleep. We need sleep. Right? Aren't those essentials? I mean, we would die without them. We would wither without them. But you said security, affection, control, and like they're essential. For what? What are they essential for, Reed?
control, I'm not so sure. I think that piece. But the affection part has got to do with procreation. It's the way the race is.
Oh, sex, you mean?
Sex.
I don't know.
Yeah, forget affection.
Oh, I forget affection. Oh, yeah. Right. You were confusing me for a second. I mean, affection is nice, but I mean, is it? I mean, the squirrels seem to do well without it. A lot of animals seem to. But anyhow, no. But actually, I'm probably demeaning them. They probably do show affection to each other. That's wrong with me. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if the species is going to continue, there is that sexual impulse. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so that's not essential for survival, but it's essential for the survival of the species. We would say. Okay. All right. I'll give you that one. Any other? All right. Okay. So yeah. So Right. So it's good to, we would hope, right, that every human being on this planet would have all those, wouldn't we? Right? And we should do our best to make sure that they do. So everybody, can have their basic needs taken care of. But they're really quite basic, aren't they? I don't want to belabor our meals in here, which again, they're making a wonderful effort. But, that's not the basic food that we need to survive, right? I mean, we could have what? What? Oatmeal. There you go. I mean, we could just have oatmeal. Go in there, just oatmeal in bowls. Banana, but that's, but you see what I'm saying? So, yeah, so but I think that's good, you see, because I think we are making ourselves as a species so precariously at the verge of being extinct or obsolete because we have created so many things that we think are necessary to survive. Right. And again, so we have to be careful, you see, because you could have gone on with your list, well, we have a need for control and we have a need for this and we have, and those are kind of higher order things. But are they really necessary? I mean, we know, just in our Buddhist tradition, great meditators, in the Christian tradition, gone off, lived in monasteries, lived in hermits, basically nothing, and seemed to be quite happy, right? So we have to be careful when we say, what is the need? And how much of that are we, again, conditioned to? Is that, yeah. So good. Thank you, Reed. Other, on this side, any other taken care of? Evelyn, you had your... Oh, wow. So again, are we all together on this one? I mean, please, this is, as we know, intellectually, we're fairly intelligent people. We can kind of grasp this. But what we're often missing is implication. So if, this is why many of us, our Dharma is only from here up, because we kind of get it intellectually, conceptually. We can read it, we can listen to it, we can understand it, we can talk it, but we don't really experience it because these teachings have implications, right, for how we live our life, for how we carry on our inner dialogue inside, right? Major implications. So again, when I say to you, are you clear? And can you see what the implications of this is for your life? The way you function, the way you live, the way you think. The stories you tell about monsters. How many of us have stories like that? I like to joke with people who talk about inner child, such as Gary this morning, who said, well, it's just my inner child, right? And again, I had to say to Gary, don't take this poorly. Gary, is there really a little Gary running around inside you? Gary? Right? And Gary had to say what? No. I mean, these are convenient terms to describe something and maybe give us a process of working with. But, none of us have an inner child running around inside us. And we have to know that. Or else it takes on a reality and identity that becomes permanent. And then you're stuck with it. Right? If ego's a monster, if ego's big, if ego's strong, if ego's powerful, then you're stuck with that. If you think you have a wounded inner child within you, you're stuck with that. You see, I may have woundings on my body, but I know they're just woundings in my body and they can be healed. They're not permanent. They're not fixed. Right? So we have to be careful we don't talk about our psyche, our mind, as if it's wounded. I mean, we talk that way, but we have to make sure that we understand that these are just words, that there's no wounded psyche. Does anybody look inside there? Anybody who thinks they have a wounded psyche, have you ever looked into your mind and see your wounded psyche? I mean, there are a number of people in here who probably think that about themselves. I'm really a wounded person. Whew. Right? Right? And I know what you're talking about. But is it true? Because if it's true, you'd be able to see it. And it would exist over time. It would be there all the time. It wouldn't be in and out. It wouldn't be now and then. It wouldn't be according to causes and conditions that it arises and disappears. If it really existed, it'd be there all the time. Right? Mm-hmm. This inner child that's not an inner child. This inner child that's not an inner child, Gary. Inner child is a convenient way of conceptualizing something. But we do not have an inner child inside us that is wounded. Nobody does. I mean, tell me from, all right, I could be totally wrong. All right, does anybody have a wounded inner child inside them? I mean, don't be embarrassed if you do.
Just to the same thing you said, which is, it's expressing an idea. Obviously, there's no human being, child, running around inside us.
So what actually is it, Gary? What are you calling if
It's a combination of
what? Combination of
experiences.
what we call those memories. So you have memories. Well, when you say conditioning, what does that actually mean? These are words. You see, we're too glib with words.